Hi folks, Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about inflation, or the numbers around inflation, food price inflation in particular, and the numbers around mass migration, particularly given the backdrop with mass migration all across the West now. There's this mantra that's being screamed out, very globalist, scripted and inspired, about there's this skills shortage. Skills. The West is short of skills, skilled workers, skills, man, more skills. And the only way we can fix this is by bringing in masses of illiterate, brown, low IQ peasants from the third world. They're the skilled people who will fix the skills shortage. I mean, who would have thunk it? But let's come back to the numbers here now. If according to the official figures on inflation, we're looking at so Western governments are claiming 10%, give or take, inflation. Some are saying inflation could be as high as 12%. Wow, that's the highest since whenever. And we look around us, we go, what? The inflation is higher than that. Now, I looked at a couple of papers from some sort of local hard number type economist folks, and they're saying that inflation is actually running the last 12 months between 4 and 5% per month. So if you compound that up, so let's say inflation's running at 60%. Now, they had a heavy emphasis on energy and food, they didn't look at the price of flat screen televisions or something like that. So now, if we look at that, I'm just looking at I'm looking at some of the things here now. The price of baseline milk has gone up by just on 1/3, or say 31% in the last 12 months. In fact, it's a little bit less than 12 months, but let's just say it's over the last 12 months. The price of other things like butter and say cream has just shy doubled. I mean, it's 210. Say it's gone up by 90%, 90% plus. So not quite double. A lot of breakfast cereals have doubled. Bread has gone up by about 40%. Bread. So that's just if you look now, bread and milk are absolute staples. They're just you got to have them. If there's no bread and milk, then you're looking at potentially explosive situations when the public get hungry. If you look at cuts of meat like lamb chops, steak, that sort of thing, they've just gone through the roof. They've easily doubled. Actually, they're already high. They've kind of been going up fairly quickly anyway, and they've gone up again. So I wouldn't think in the last 12 months they've gone up by much more than 30 to 40%. But they also were having fairly steep rises in the 1 or 2 years before. The only meat that hasn't increased noticeably is chicken. That's say got an average of maybe 20%. That's gone up after having been stable for quite a while. Pork has gone up, not so much. Turkey meat's gone through the roof. And any value add, like for example, chicken mince, that's gone up by 45% over the last 12 months, and so on. But if you boil it down to the basics, say just for example, chicken. Let's just take chicken because that was the cheapest cut of meat as it was. So chicken, bread, milk, and vegetables are a little bit harder to. Fresh vegetables, that is, are a little bit harder to gauge because there's quite a lot of seasonal stuff in there. So that's a little bit more difficult. And there can be other things like severe weather conditions, for example, could reduce the amount of the amount of food or the amount of vegetables that manage to make it through to maturity and or being ripe and getting picked. So that could affect that. So that's harder to nail down. I mean, it is more expensive, but again, harder to do the proper comparison. Eggs have gone up again by 35, 40%, and so on. So if we again come down to the basics, eggs, bread, milk, that sort of thing, chicken, and say, well, the overall increase, if you take all those categories up, has been 40% in the last 12 months. So at the very least, even if you're eating the basics, it's 40%. Now, if you go to the more value add stuff, such as sauces and seasonings and things like that, then you're looking at a higher rate of inflation. So we're talking really in food a minimum inflation of high 30s. I guess it'll wash out at. Now, if we look at the price, the energy price increases, which is key. Then even a basic shopping cart, a bit before you add anything fancy, is going to cost you quite a bit more. Now, those are the entry level products, I should add. Those are the budget, the budget products. If you want to go to anything with a bit more value add, a bit fancier, or supposedly better tasting or anything like that, then you're heading into 50% inflation. And as I say, breakfast cereal, most breakfast cereals have doubled. So if you're into breakfast cereal, you're paying a lot more. Other things like jams and peanut butter, not so much, but all the jams, that sort of thing, they've gone up considerably in price, as have other things. Things like laundry detergent, as an example. Now I'm looking at here. Laundry detergent was this one here was $18 a year ago, and is now $21.90, $22. So that's a 20% increase. So everything's gone up by even 20% is the low range. That prices have gone up. So really, when they try and tell you that it's 10 or 12% for the year, that's clearly nonsense. The inflation rate is far higher. And again, that's the budget foods. You want to go into the better cuts of meat and the breakfast cereals, things like that. Then you're looking at probably closer to 50% more, I would think. So now some people can afford that and not really bother and save. But if you're and I'll round it off to round numbers. If your grocery bill is $100 a week, then it's now $135 a week, give or take. So that's a decent hit to people who are on fixed incomes and lower fixed incomes for that. So this is causing a major change. Now, what's interesting is that the price of these various things has gone up almost exactly the same in multiple different Western countries, Britain, Australia, and New Zealand, and so on, even though each country has vastly different situations. Australia is self-sufficient in a lot of the foods, whereas Britain has to import everything. Now, even though Australia is self-sufficient and Britain imports nearly all their food, for some reason, the price rises are about the same. And Australia has, large surpluses in certain foods and areas that they're exporting, yet the price still goes up by the same amount it has in Britain, where there's no surplus. And again, they're importing. In some places, they're importing from places that aren't necessarily very cheap. We're importing it from Australia, even, for goodness sakes. So that doesn't make any sense. The price rises, you'd think, would reflect local conditions and local circumstances, local supply of goods and services, eggs and so on. So, but it doesn't do that. It's in quite tight unison, really. There's maybe 1 or 2% in it, but that's all. Now, I don't get that. That means it's internationally coordinated. There's no other explanation for it. And even local firms that are completely local in Australia and they've got no affiliation with any international firm, they're still falling in line with this international pricing. So clearly it's international pricing. It's being driven by a central secretariat, Soviet communist central planning secretariat, and they're driving this. There's no way it can be natural or organic or in response to actual increase in costs or increase in production or anything like that. Now, somebody mentioned to me as I was sort of thinking about this, so well, the pricing of say, commodities, wheat, for example, it may be based on the international commodities and futures trading on the commodities market. Therefore, maybe pricing's based on, but even that doesn't stack up because areas that aren't covered by the commodity pricing are still in unison on price. Again, even though the factors that would affect these prices are wildly different across different jurisdictions, the price increase is the same. So what this says is that it's internationally coordinated, it's internationally set and established without our knowledge or consent. No one's talking about it, no one's saying anything about it. Our politicians should be screaming from the rooftops, but of course they don't represent us anymore. And haven't for maybe 25 years or longer. They represent the globalists. The globalists saying, you will do this. This is how you will set up the pricing. You will squeeze the local population to this extent. We say they can tolerate these price rises. It is essential that you implement this in order to destroy and eradicate the middle class capitalist society that we want to get rid of. Okay, sure. If you do this for us, we'll give you a couple more waterfront properties, and you and your kids will be okay, fine. But you must do this to crush your local population. And so this is what's happening, whether it be the price of petroleum or oil or anything else. It really doesn't matter. But the pricing is clearly international. Now coming to mass migration. Just out of just doodling with some numbers about the percentage of migrants being brought into Britain relative to the total population, relative to the people that were leaving the country. So say, now I don't believe when they say that, a million, for example, a million migrants came in, but 500,000 left. I don't believe that. I don't believe those numbers. They're cooking the books as they're doing with inflation. Inflation's 30 to 40%, but they're saying it's 10 to 12%. Well, clearly it's not. That's bullshit. So I don't know why they're so adamant about telling us so many lies, but I suppose it's what the globalists are telling them to do, so they have to. Otherwise, they won't get their waterfront mansions without doing what they're told. But if you look at the numbers, or I look at the numbers, and I sort of came across this little by accident. Again, I was doodling with the numbers because I'd seen the numbers in Australia about the percentage of people, mass migrants coming in, ostensibly to cover this so-called skill shortage, which is, again, an utter lie, total and utter lie. That the amount of people coming into Britain as migrants, as a net amount, and coming into Australia as migrants, net amount, was, in percentage terms, as in percentage of population, was almost exactly the same. Now, that can't happen in some organic situation. If you look at New Zealand again, it's the same. I just don't believe that in any natural organic sense that all these numbers would line up so perfectly across different areas with different access to different populations and so on and so forth. I just don't believe that's possible. Well, it isn't possible. So clearly the numbers, as well as being cooked, clearly the numbers are being decided by, again, the central secretariat, the central planning bureau, that are saying, okay, you're going to have a certain amount of people as migrants coming in, it'll be this proportion, it'll be this percentage, and this is what you will do. And so the government, again, controlled by the globalists, dutifully do as they're instructed. So I'm realizing now that just everything that happens now in the Western world is centrally planned, orchestrated, scripted by the globalists, and our politicians just get their instructions from the globalists and just do as they're told. You've been with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for listening.